A former mental health professional at Rikers Island, which holds New York City's biggest jail, is coming forward and talking about what she saw there. I'm Olivia Bennett. I'm a true crime journalist. Let's talk about it. Today, I'm joined by Justina Rosinski. She was formerly the clinical supervisor for mental health at Rikers. Justina, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell me a little bit about your journey. I saw where you came to the US at 7 and didn't speak English, and now you're getting your PhD. That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity. Yes, so I came to the US from Poland when I was 7 years old, and I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice, where I'm also an adjunct instructor for forensic psychology. And after that, I received my MSW, which is the Master's in Social Work from Hunter College. And now I am in school getting my PhD in social welfare. Before Rikers Island, I worked in an outpatient mental health and substance abuse program for people that were mandated to treatment by parole. So these are individuals who are coming from incarceration, and I loved working with that population. I did it for 10 years. It was a great experience. I always knew that I wanted to work with this population. I don't know like why, but it was just always an interest of mine. So when I started working with people on parole, it just validated my interest. And then the opportunity came to work on Rikers Island. And really, I began my studies in my PhD to really be able to work on criminal justice reform. So when I saw the opportunity to work on Rikers Island, I thought to myself, when will I ever have this opportunity again? And if I am going to talk about criminal justice reform and work on policies, I need to have experience working there. I've never been incarcerated myself, so I thought to myself, like, how am I going to talk about it? And I've never even stepped foot inside Rikers Island. So that was really the main reason why I decided to work there.
So, what initially interested you in criminal justice reform?
I really don't know. Like I said, I was always interested in working in jails and prisons, working with people who commit crimes. Like I always believed that people can change. So I always wanted to like work with populations that like other individuals didn't want to work with them because I really did believe like people can change. So that's really where that interest came from. It wasn't like anything specific or like a specific situation that happened to me. I just really wanted to help people that like other people did not want to help.
So, when you first started working at Rikers, what were your responsibilities?
So I was the clinical supervisor in two mental health units. One was the mental observation unit, and that had 50 individuals housed, and the other was PACE, which is a level higher, and that had about 38 patients in there. And my tasks were I would supervise the clinician on the floor. I would have to check their treatment plans. I spoke to the patients very often on the unit. I was there every day speaking to them. And I would have to also send individuals to Bellevue, which is a hospital in New York City, and they have a prison ward. That's where we would send individuals. I would also determine their level of care. So for the mental observation unit, I would either lower their level of care, which means the individual would go into general population, or they would stay in this level of care, or they needed a higher level of care, which meant they would be in PACE.
What did you see when you started working at Rikers that has led you to the point that you're at now?
So I saw the practice of deadlocking. I saw people being locked in their cells for weeks and months without access to their medications or showers. And when I first started, there were individuals deadlocked there, but I didn't know how long. So as time went on, I saw like, okay, this person's now deadlocked for a week, for 2 weeks, for a month. So I quickly saw this practice, and the officers never documented this, but what they would do is in the bubble, where the control panel is and their cell door numbers, they would put a white tag so that if another officer came or they changed shifts, everybody knew, don't open the door, this person is deadlocked. And these are all individuals with a severe mental illness, such as schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. bipolar disorder. And because the medication would come on the floor, if they were deadlocked, they would not be able to leave their cell to get their medications.
So if someone is deadlocked and they have a medical emergency, what happens?
I mean, if it's a medical emergency, then they would be taken to medical. I never witnessed anyone having a medical emergency, but the conditions that they were living in, you could say it was like a medical emergency. I mean, the conditions they were living in, they were smearing feces. Um, they tore up their mattress. There were flies in the cell because of the feces. And this is how they woke up, went to sleep, and ate 3 meals a day in those dirty cells. And it was something that I have never experienced in my life. Like, I live in New York City, I ride the train every day, and I see how some people live. And I just never witnessed those kinds of living conditions.
Were people in custody terrified of being deadlocked?
They were, and also the other people in custody, like the other my patients that were there would advocate for them and would talk to the officers and me to do something to let them out because they told me that, like, Justin, this is inhumane. Like, they couldn't believe it themselves.
Do you know if higher administration was aware of this practice?
Um, they were, because the captains would come on the floor. They would have to regularly do like rounds. So they would come in on the floor and they would see the individuals being locked in.
What was life like for detainees that were deadlocked? What was it like in their cells?
So sorry. So the cells were in horrible conditions. I've never experienced seeing something like that. I never seen people live in those kinds of conditions. These individuals had a severe mental illness, such as schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder. So they decompensated very quickly, which led to them smearing feces all over the cell, banging, screaming all day and night. Some would rip up their mattresses in frustration. So, like I said, it was something I'd never seen in my life.
And this, like you said, is technically more intense than solitary confinement because they're not let out at all.
Yeah.
So, what kind of behaviors or incidents would lead to deadlocking?
So it really varied, and it was really difficult for us to know because, like I stated, this wasn't documented. A lot of times I would come back to work on Monday and there were 15 people locked in, but like the officers didn't know because they weren't here on the weekend. But it could be as like a patient looking inappropriately at an officer, making them feel uncomfortable, and that officer decides to lock them in. Or if the patient disrespects them, curses them out, they'll lock them in. So it really varied. It could have been just like inappropriate behavior.
Okay, that makes sense. So, out of curiosity, you mentioned if a patient looks at an officer wrong, is that referencing a specific incident? Is there specific context behind that?
Yes, so I had one patient who came on my unit and he was deadlocked from the beginning. The officer said that he's going to be deadlocked because on the other unit, he likes to play with shit. And this is the term that they would use. Someone, they wouldn't say smearing feces, they would say this individual likes to play with shit. So automatically they deadlocked him and he would scream, bang, and yell. And finally we were able to get him out because there were officers, very few officers, who would do this, and we knew who they were, but we would have to sometimes wait for them to come to work, or sometimes, they had to go to another unit. So we were able to get him out, and he was acting a little odd because he's diagnosed with schizophrenia. He was locked in his cell for months. He would often like stare at me. He would stand by the door staring, but that didn't really bother me because I knew of his condition. So he did well for that week. He took his medication every day. There were no like violent incidents. And then I come back to work on Monday and he's deadlocked. And I asked the officers and they said they're not really sure because they weren't here on the weekend, but they think it's because this other female officer from the other unit came to get water from our office, and he was like standing close to her and looking at her inappropriately, so they deadlocked him.
So, how does deadlocking impact rehabilitation?
I mean, there is no rehabilitation, and it makes the individual worse because now they're not getting the treatment that they need. They decompensate to that point. A lot of the patients wouldn't even talk to me. Like, I would go up to their cell and they wouldn't respond, or if they did respond, they would yell and curse. So there was no rehabilitation. They got worse once they were there.
So, how did deadlocking impact the relationship between officers and detainees?
I mean, there was no relationship between them. It's like when somebody's deadlocked, like they're forget. Like people forgot them. Usually the officers will put their cells, would have them in cells that were all the way in the back. We still heard like the screaming and banging, but not so much. Like that cell was never in the front where the officers would sit. Um, and like I said, a lot of the patients weren't even communicating once they were deadlocked.
The screaming and the banging, was this constant?
It was. I mean, there was points where I couldn't even sit in my office and do my work because I heard screaming and banging. I remember once I called my mom for lunch and she asked me, she's like, "Who's screaming and banging like that?" Like she heard it on the other line. There was also times where I didn't eat lunch in my office and had to go all the way to the cafeteria because I would smell the feces. I mean, I would speak to my supervisors about it, like the director. Everybody knew this was in every mental health unit, and this has been going on for years. A lot of people like ask me, "How long do you think it's been going on?" And it's hard for me to say because I got there in December of 2023, but it was standard practice when I got there. They weren't even trying to hide it. So like it's been going on for years. So everybody was aware of this.
Do you have an idea of how long it's been going on?
I have no idea really, but it had to be years.
Years. That's a long time.
Yeah.
So, do you feel like your concerns were taken seriously when you reported it internally?
Um, I mean, kind of, but there was nothing really we can do because it was really up to the officers. So sometimes they did allow individuals out, and a lot of times it was when the mental health staff would ask too, but it really depended on the officer. Um, so could have it been escalated even farther up? I believe it could have, but really were we were really not able to do much because the officers control like security, so we don't have the power to lock anyone in or lock anyone out, so it was really up to them.
So, when you decided to resign and you decided to take a stand, can you tell me step by step what that looked like and how you got to the place that you're in now, where you're advocating?
So I have a friend who was formerly incarcerated, and he works for a public defender's office also, and I would often talk to him about Rikers because I really needed to like vent, and he was incarcerated there at one point, so he understood. And when I decided to resign and I looked for another job and found another job, I told him that I want to like say something. I want to do something about this. And he connected me to a lawyer, Gina Mitchell, who works there. And I told her the situation. And she connected me to lawyers from New York County defenders because they specialize with clients with a mental illness. So she connected me to them, and I had a meeting with them. And this was while I still was working there because when I resigned, I gave them about 3 weeks notice. So I met with the lawyers and I told them what I saw. And I did tell them that currently I'm still employed, so I don't want to do anything right now as I'm employed. But once my last day I remember was September 20th, a Friday, and then that Monday I met with them and their team, and we came up with a strategy of what we want to do. So they did ask me if I want to go public with this or not. And that took a few days because I was really thinking like, okay, do I want my name out there? I was concerned for my safety. I also have a child. So I was concerned for that. But they did connect me to some people who were whistleblowers from Rikers. And I was able to speak to them and made my decision that I do want to go public because also going public would have a bigger impact. So we decided that I will testify before the Board of Correction meeting on October 8th. And then I was interviewed by Daily News and it made the story there.
What has going public been like so far? I mean, did you expect it to go as far as it did?
No, never in my life did I expect it gets so big. There was even a point where I remember I was talking to my mom and I said to her, like, oh, the officers that are on the floor, like, they're not going to even find out about this. Like, they don't read the paper. And then I was told, like, that day, everybody had the paper on Rikers and everybody was talking about it. So I never imagined that it would be this big. And I just thought it would be like that news article. I testify October 8th, and that would be really it. I really didn't know what to expect. And after that, there's been more articles about this. I've gotten involved in different organizations. So I never like imagined that. A lot of people contacted me. So like I said, I never thought it would be this big.
So legally, where is this case at right now?
So right now, the Department of Investigations is investigating. The investigation started in November, and they did say that it could take like a year. So we're really waiting on the Department of Investigations.
So what do you see for your future? Do you see more justice reform advocacy?
Yes, I definitely do. And right now, I'm part of a group called Social Workers and Allies Against Solitary Confinement. And we are pushing for a bill to get passed in New York where every healthcare professional that works in a jail or prison would be obligated to report any abuse that they see. Because while I was working on Rikers, there was no one I can report this to. And being a social worker, I am a mandated report. And I just thought that was really that there's no outside agency to report abuse. If I see a child being abused, I would call ACS, but there was no one to call. So there isn't that law in New York. So we're working to like pass that law so that everybody would be held accountable, and also when they do report that they have protections. So that's really what the focus is on, talking to senators and getting that law passed and continue speaking out about what I saw because I really loved working in Rikers. I loved working with my patients. The problem was the staff and the officers, and I made a promise to myself when I resigned that I am leaving, but I'm not going to leave my patients behind, and I'm going to continue to advocate for them and make sure that like this stops from happening. So I'm, trying to keep my promise. And I mean, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my patients or Rikers. Like I said, it's been my whole life right now. Um, so I just want everyone to know so that this can be stopped and people can be treated as humans while they're detained on Rikers. And also, what I didn't mention is that 85% of people on Rikers have not been convicted. So they're still innocent until proven guilty. But even if they were convicted of a crime, this is no way to treat another human being. Like, this is someone's father, brother, friend, family member. Um, they still deserve dignity and respect.
Tell me something that gives you hope in your fight for a more humane environment.
I really believe that like our voices can make a change. And I was told that once the article came out, everybody was let out of deadlock because, people were coming to visit and DOC stated that it doesn't exist. So they let everyone out. And I was so like shocked by that. I said, oh my God, like I can't believe like I did that. Like now everyone in that facility is let out. Like I just couldn't believe it. So I think it gives me hope that like people are actually listening to me. And I do believe that there can be like some change.
What is a message that you have for people who might be watching this who are witnessing any sort of abuse somewhere that they work and they don't know how to speak up?
Yeah, I really think it's important to speak up. And like I said, I understand people work in these environments and sometimes it's more difficult to speak out. But I think it's so important to have a good support system. Like I had a very good support system around me and people who encouraged me to speak out, and I knew that they would support me. And I must say, like after I spoke out, the support that I received from other advocates, most of them have been people who were formerly incarcerated and lawyers. Like, it has been just like the most amazing experience ever. I got so much support. Unfortunately, I lost some friends on Rikers, people who I thought were my friends who don't speak to me anymore because of this. But I gained so much support from all of these advocates. So it's been an amazing experience.
Justina, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your insight. And I look forward to watching what you'll do.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching and make sure to check out watchtrueblue.com for more true crime content. As always, you can follow me at Crime with Olivia for more crime news. Stay safe.